John, welcome to A Seat at the Table.
Thank you.
Thanks heaps for being on the podcast. A bit about you. John is the founder and executive chair of All Things Considered, a platform for considerate consumers of fashion, chair of the Industry Advisory Group for the Future of Learning at the University of Canterbury, a director of Airways New Zealand and Airways International, the founder and chair of Territory 3, Kiwi Landing Pad Reimagined, and the chair and trustee for the Free for All Charitable Trust. Welcome, John, to the podcast. We're honoured to have you.
It sounds all very important.
It does. It really does. It's quite the intro, for sure. You definitely got your hands in a few things, which I'm looking forward to diving into. And like we said before we hit record, inspired by how you've built community, and looking forward to asking you some real community-focused questions today as well. But first of all, we like to do some quick fire.
Quick fire questions. That is a very long list and very, very impressive, John. So it's a real honour to meet you. But we've got some fun questions just to get things rolling. We don't even want you to think about it, the answers. So party with 100 or 5 people?
5, as long as they're interesting and fun.
Yeah, good call.
When are you most relaxed?
Flying. Mid-flight, just to be clear. There's a lot of things to do, but like when everything's weighted and balanced and life's good.
Yeah.
What does a day in the life of John look like?
I think variety's the spice of life, so there isn't really a day that's the same. I'm an early riser, so whatever happens, it happens from about 4:30, 5 o'clock. And I'm pretty early, unless there's something fun to do to sleep as well. Obviously, a lot of the stuff I do is really just about people and supporting them. So my scheduled day can suddenly, like it has this week, just turn into an hour and a half mentoring call just on a particular issue, an issue with a company, some mentoring, and then our scheduled stuff this week was a really cool founder dinner we had with Territory 3, so invitation only, share really what's on your mind, because there's no one there that's not, it's going to sort of shock you out on being vulnerable and talking about that, which I love, because I'm a founder again now, I'm in the trenches.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is quick fire, so I'll shut up.
That's good.
What are you curious about right now?
Pretty much everything.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah, constantly curious.
Yeah.
Good description for my state of mind.
If you could invite one person to dinner tonight, dead or alive, who would it be?
I'd like them alive. You mean they would be alive if I came?
They're really boring, even, to be fair.
Yvonne Chenard, and I've never really said his name aloud, so he's the founder of Patagonia, who's just done some very cool stuff.
Of course, yeah.
Yvonne, if you're listening, 7:30.
Tonight.
Bottle of your favourite Pinot Noir.
That's
unreal.
Awesome. I love that. Great start. And we said we're going to have fun, and you're bringing the fun. You're bringing the fun vibes. So
actually, we're not going to work for it.
Yeah, we're not working for it. Yeah, it's good. So I'm going to start with this big question. What is your purpose, John, and what in your life has led to that purpose?
I know the answer to this one.
Great.
My purpose statement I did a few years ago, and I challenge everybody to think about having one, and mine is to actively engage the world, with an emphasis on actively, and learn and grow from that engagement, and share and share with others.
Wow.
Where did that come from?
Yeah. It came from a lot of thinking about purpose, and some proper sort of mirror conversations, and actually quite a lot of quiet diligence around people that I respect around me in terms of what I portray to them. So it was authentic.
Have you had that purpose for a while?
I think I've had it for a long time, but I think it's crucial to actually encapsulate it so that you can encourage others to think about it, because I think a lot of us kind of struggle with all sorts of things in our lives because we aren't actually sure truly what we are here for.
What would you suggest for someone that's going, what is my purpose? Where's this place to start to find it?
I think you need to be inflective first and really be honest about what makes you happy, and then perhaps go outside of that. I mean, we've just got such a fascinating and frightening world at the moment around everything that's changing, especially around norms, cultural norms, everything is changing, and actually it's changing at a rate that we've never seen before, partly because of these natural disasters, partly because of these social disasters, and so I think you have to go back to your roots of who you are, almost to your childlike state, they say.
I was going to ask, is this innate in you? Was this something that you felt as a child, or did you learn it?
I think I'm actually more of a child now than I was when I was a child. That's what people tell me, anyway.
That's cool.
Because I think you have to embrace that. That's where you're at your best. Because you're open, you think best, because you don't bring in these norms and constructions of how you've been educated or what you've been, people you've been around that have just influenced you, sometimes not that well, about what you think about things and how you approach things. And I think you just have to take it back to a human level about what feels actually like the right way to kind of exist.
I love the idea of mirror conversations, because you see so many people who spend way too much time looking out the window before they and that sense of how important that is to understanding who we are and why we are.
I've got a friend who moved here a while ago, American, and he woke up one day very successful, looked in the mirror and said, I won't say his name, and he said, "You're an asshole."
Wow.
And changed his whole life. And there was nothing wrong with his life in terms of what people would say was a good life, but he just decided it wasn't the one that he wanted to be.
He knew internally.
So a good friend of mine who is still in America, but he had a similar kind of moment where he woke up and he said, "My whole life is about whatness, not who's."
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah, there's am I allowed to quote people on?
Yeah, go.
There's a super cool quote. There's a guy called Paul Tudor Jones. He's probably one of the most successful hedge fund managers in the world. He's based in the US. And he was interviewed the other day with Purpose Capital. He's the chair of Purpose Capital, which is Purpose Capital, I think it's called. And what he said, I thought was very poignant for people like me who sort of do governance-y stuff and have influence over a lot of things, which is a big responsibility. And he said, when you look at the end of your life as a director or a chair, in any of those sort of modes, and you work out which of two tombstones you want. And one of them says, and here he goes, he's still trying to find this damn, I'll paraphrase. One of them says, "I made an elephant's belly full of money for my shareholders," and the other says, "I'm at peace with what I created and helped improve and grow in the environment of my business and the people around it in the community." So
That's it. That's what it's all about, eh? That's very cool. You seem to me like someone that takes a lot in their stride, and I'd like to know what's been like a deep valley challenge for you in this journey, and also on the other side, a mountaintop moment.
I was trying to think about that. It's a bit of a blank, people have there's a new thing called facial blindness. I think I have so people claim that they miss you in the street or they ignore you because they actually have this thing called facial blindness, so they don't see faces the way that they are, so they can just literally look through you. I think that, I don't have that, but I think that for peaks and troughs, I've definitely had tons of them.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, there's absolutely nothing like taking a piece of paper, homes.co.nz. I built the idea of that in my favourite cafe in Wellington, Prefab, and I've actually built a lot of the stuff for All Things Considered. And I laugh with them because they are fantastic entrepreneurs. Jeff and Bridget who run that. That's where a lot of these things are created, and so I love looking back and going, that's where that started on it. And I keep all the pieces of paper and the drawings and stuff. And obviously a lot of people come with you on those journeys, but mountain moments, it's like we sold that to Trade Me last year.
Wow.
I was quite distant from it by then, but it's still a great feeling. I mean, 40 staff or something, all happier and better off in the world, consumers of property data in New Zealand actually having it for free, so it's like this classic sort of balance of benefits, which just gives you a real high. Lows, just constantly disappointed with with my fellow humans around some stuff, almost on a weekly basis. The latest one, we don't publicise it, but there's a rapper chap who's just decided to take some weird position.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I think we all do in a brand. This sort of comes into what we're doing with All Things Considered. But brands, had one of those challenges. It's like, do you go with the madness? Which, I asked a couple of my kids about would they stop, buying products, endorsed by that person, and they said no. I mean, at least they were honest. But those things just get me into a little bit of a spin about, how people get to where they get to.
So true.
And the energy it takes versus,
With that, you're obviously very passionate about building businesses that have impact and make change. From your point of view, what power does business have when it comes to bettering New Zealand, people and the planet overall?
Power has most of the business at the moment. Business has most of the power.
Yeah, I was like, unpack that.
And
I was going to say, can you explain that?
And vice versa.
Works both ways, sort of.
Business is really just a reflection of community, right? And there are so many issues that governments arguably were never in a position to try and fix for us. Governments arguably were never tasked with fixing these challenges for us. And predominantly because the businesses have actually created most of them.
Interesting.
Now, there's obviously a sort of pretty key third leg to that stool, which is the people that actually decide to consume what businesses produce, and they choose the businesses, obviously, they decide to consume from. Some of them they have to consume from, and some of them they definitely do not. And if you think back to like 10 years ago in terms of the number of things that you could actually have in your bag to come here or to go somewhere, there's a proliferation of stuff that the consumerism was easy because it didn't exist. So you couldn't buy it. So you had less stuff. And I think that's the challenge. And so therefore, to your question, the power for the business is to really actually genuinely drive that change and respond to consumers' desire increasingly for that change to happen, but certainly not the majority of consumers are on that bus yet.
Do you think that 10 years ago compared to now, there is more of a chance for a cult or a niche brand to make their way through and be better and do better than the stodgy big businesses that we could only choose from 10 years ago?
100% yes.
Yeah.
That is one of the still, in my opinion, massively untapped benefits of digitisation. So at the moment I've only really seen mainly evil elements of digitisation in terms of us being able to bring a community together intuitively and inherently through technology, understand what they want and increasing numbers when they want it, which is super cool, but unfortunately the way that manifests itself is just evil. The first coroner's inquest where the judge refused to rule a young woman's suicide as suicide because the parents devoutly, and this has just come out this last week, Molly Russell stood by their discovery process of how she got to the point where she decided to kill herself. And it was through online bullying, it was Pinterest and Instagram, which were the two platforms, and the logarithms and the technology that underpins potentially the speed of which something can change, to your question, just put her in a position where she was being served constantly new pins and new folders of how to kill yourself, because that's what you've been looking at. So we've got so much to change around that, and I think some brands and the cult side of things is obviously a big part of a brand. I mean, essentially it is a cult. I mean, if you get excited about something that's suddenly not mainstream because it's more organic or because it's been created by an influencer, it doesn't matter what it is. I think to your question, it's so quick, and who would have thought that we'd live in a world where a NASDAQ listed, publicly listed US company could be at one stage 60% owned by meme shareholders from a Reddit feed. That's the power that things can change really quickly.
So interesting. So what was that aha moment with All Things Considered, and what's that journey been like, developing that business?
Look, it's a thesis. It's a research thesis. It's taken a long time. I originally had an idea for a thing called Purpose Exchange, and that was a much simpler idea around just simply taking the feeds from the major indexes of the New Zealand, the biggest companies in the world, and feeding really in the interests of creating more opportunity for corporate philanthropy.
Yeah, great.
So that people could see what companies were doing, sort of sustainability-wise, and then they could also see the charities that they were supporting and align themselves more as a consumer, which consumers are naturally doing now too, around the purpose of the company as well as the profitability in the product. And that just was too wide, and sadly the research, I did a lot of research, had a wonderful woman, Melissa, who did that for me for about 6 months. And what we found basically is that the only reason corporate philanthropy is more advanced than other countries at about 5% is because there's a better tax regime around it. And none of it is longevity. And you talk to these causes. I'm the chair of an organisation I'm very proud of in Porirua called Free For All Charitable Trust. I don't know whether that was on there, but and so I've been working with a crazy woman for 8 years who stalked me on LinkedIn and is allergic to waste, and she basically would intercept the wolf edges that were going from op shops that sell per item second-hand items, for fueling their causes. And they'd gone cold on the shelves, so they do what any store does and they try and get rid of them, and they send them to landfill. And she didn't like that, so she would go and ask if she could sort them, and 95% of the stuff in those wolf edges she would put on her front lawn for people to come pick up for free. And so long journey, but we've now got a 400 square metre facility in Porirua, one of the most challenged communities for a whole bunch of reasons over the last 20 years. We pay $5 to get in. You can take as much as you like. It's racked and displayed like a beautifully set up shop. You can take plates, you can take clothes, you can take, and we're a waste minimisation charity. So when they come out here, we've got commercial scales, and they weigh what they're taking, and we thank them for helping us with our core goal. But in their view, they've just got a whole lot of stuff that they couldn't afford, and this place makes you cry every time you go out there, because you'll see kids who have basically got a free shopping experience like they've never had in their life. They like to normally go, "Oh, sorry, Mum, I won't look at the toys," and she's like, you can basically take whatever you can fit in your little bag, and we'll weigh it at the end, and we've actually done everything. So I think the point to all that is, like, with that experience of causes and the question, I go a long way off question, you're just going to have to get used to that.
That's brilliant.
Gives context.
Is that, if that has been a huge journey to get to where we've got to through a small number, one in particular, Frank Pearson, I have to call him out by name because he's been an amazing philanthropist. He's been careful to try and understand, and this is the other challenge, causes are not run by business people, so they do have challenges actually operating to a highest level of integrity and governance. And we've now got this 6-year lease on this building. The landlord came down, he loves it, he said, "I never want us to go away from the region." We were on ASB Good Source, which gives us great publicity and great recognition for Dee, who's done this for free for the last 8 years. I don't know how Jason, her husband, originally their double garage was literally to the ceiling with whatever people would drop off to him. But the support from a purpose-driven company point of view is, and that's the problem we have.
But somebody had to listen to the crazy person. Right? You know what I mean? Like, it's got to start with.
We're all crazy. I'm crazy.
Exactly.
It's different kind of crazy.
But without judgment, just taking a minute to look and say, this is. What can
There's something there.
Do something with this.
Well, they say in marketing that to be convinced about something, you need to actually see it independently from 3 different sources that you trust or feel have credibility. And for me, Dee came in, we talked, she laid out her vision, and she told me a lot, which has actually gone into All Things Considered, which was just the wastefulness of the textile and apparel industry in the world. It's actually quite a nice moment because I fly planes, and it's like it's a more emissive supply chain in total than the aviation industry.
Wow.
I mean, think about that.
Why do we not know that?
Well, I mean, you'll know if you've sat in a room with me pretty quickly. But I think that it's context. Often people just don't want to know.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it, John. I think that, we there's too much. I just put my head in the sand on that one.
100%. So I just did this talk at Semi-Permanent last week, which was a fantastic conference, by the way, Simon Belvin, and that was the first one I've ever been to. It was fabulous. And I did a panel with Roman from Fix and Fog. It's an amazing business. Set up day one sustainably, and India corner from Method Recycling, and we were talking about the future of people and planet, and there are businesses that are like on that path. They're both like great examples of them, but they're the minority, and their audiences are still early and still relatively small. But to your question, I think that's what is going to change it, and they need help to get the support, and now they're doing amazingly well. But it's that standard journey. The first 3 or 4 years, most of them just don't get through.
For context for those listening, how does All Things Considered work as a platform?
So All Things Considered is basically a big data, machine learning and AI play in the back end. In the front end, it's the platform for discovery and research for considerate consumers, initially of fashion. People who give a shit, basically, about where they buy their clothes from. And the reason we started in fashion is that, I had one of these great serendipitous moments around the purpose exchange thing. Wasn't working, didn't, shut it down, basically. That's a trough moment for me, shutting something down. Shut that down, and I shut a foolish project to try and put a 4K camera inside a bicycle helmet. Never do that. No one's done it still, but I think it's a great idea, but don't do that. It's expensive mistake. So All Things Considered is really about, it's really hard to eat cereal.
Do I eat cereal?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, and the little, on the back of the cereal box, there's all the badges, GMO free, and I got this from there, and blah, and that. So that's kind of what fashion is like now, as well, as they try and align themselves to an increasing number of consumers who want to know they're trying to do something around environmental. And probably actually for a lot of our early folks, we've got about 500, actually we're 8 off 500 registered users.
Awesome.
Because the thing about being registered to use, to your question, is that the big thing about it is to have your say. And the starting point for us, and of course we're going to collect the data from that for good as well. And the big thing about having your say is that your say is what you say. So we're not going down a rating and ranking sort of approach. We're not going down hey, we'll just pick the most ethical brands and we'll put them on there and we'll guide people that way, because it doesn't scale. We're using AI to scrape every brand in the world. How many fashion brands do you think are in the world? 300,000.
Wow.
I thought there'd be more.
300,000, and that's not including the supply chain that supplies them, the buttons, the materials, and there's 85,000 skincare and cosmetics brands. So our total addressable market is is massive. But you've got to start somewhere. So I met Andrea van der Merwe. She's an amazing woman. She's been 15 years in retail, literally started as a retail assistant at 15 or 16, worked her way up into category roles, I Love Ugly, and then she went out and decided to do a startup, which is just so cool, because she's had no formal education academically, and she just decided to do a startup. And the startup for her was the frustration in that 15 years of being in a store and seeing all this crap come down from the designers that didn't fit properly, it was the wrong size tag to that. So she wanted to build an app that would let you basically as a shop assistant say, hey, this colour is just not selling, so don't manufacture anymore, and give that value back up to the long chain and the time. The fashion industry is way slow. People are designing clothes. They're designing them now for next year, and then they're going to get produced. And then if you've decided halfway through that process that fashion's changed, you're toast. So Seek Stock was that business, and then COVID came. She had some early customers. Seek Stock, there was a Lightning Lab alumni, and she'd done an amazing job. So I have a company I'm involved in called Putty Apps, Safety Car Limited, which I'm the chair, and I don't think it was on there, but it's like I've been with those folks for 8 years. We sold half of it to Spark New Zealand, and then we bought half of it back again. and it's an apps company. And Bruce, the CEO there, he said, "Hey, I've met this woman who's got a bit, she's got a bit stumped with the COVID thing. You should talk to her because she's not going to be able to move forward because no stores are open." And I think she's very high potential, and that's my philosophy across my whole portfolio. All the people who work for me, my CEO Bruce and so forth, they know that I'll talk to anybody once, particularly if there's just a spark of potential, because that's what you need to do anything, and it could be anywhere right now. So she came. She educated me about the fashion industry, and she said, "Do you know?" And she starts, and I mean, she lives this stuff. Yeah. She was on Breakfast TV a couple of weeks ago with Jenny May Coffin, and she just blew them away in terms of her knowledge about how to be a more sustainable. We have a joke when I see, she's based in Auckland, I live in Wellington, and I come and we do most of our stuff remotely, but I'll see her on Friday and she'll just give me a number. It'll be like 15 or something like that, and that will be the cost of the clothing. She looked sharp. She's just been in a Barker's Max fashion shoot thing that they wanted to do around giving our message out to their customers, because ultimately the business side of all things considered is that we build a considerate community. Yep. As the world, our bet is that the world becomes more considerate, and I'll talk about the difference between conscious and considerate as well, because that's a really important thing. I talked about semi-permanent, but as that considerate community develops, we believe that brands will actually pay to, it's a $500 billion market for marketing and insights that fashion brands spend every year. $2.3 trillion of clothing. There's more clothing in the world today, I think, to basically give everyone, winter and summer outfits times 100. Yeah. We don't actually need any more clothes. And a lot of people are looking at this circularly, and a lot of people who buy very high-end fashion actually never actually throw anything away. So in some ways, sustainability, you've got to be really careful. It's not just about kind of suddenly going down a different track. Often it's just about keeping the things you have. Yeah. And so basically, you will subscribe as a brand, and what we'll give you is real-time access, validated access, blockchain. This is really this Barker's brand or Max brand, and they'll get into the conversations. Because one of the frustrations they have is, there was a classic one that's very public, so I'll talk about it because we're careful, because we're a curator. We're really focused on the community of consumers. We love to talk to brands who are genuinely looking to help, but we don't really spend much time on them. So you're on our site as Kathmandu or Barker's, or whether you like it or not, because we've just scraped your sustainability page, if you have one, and we've put it there to your question about what All Things does, in an easy way for you to reference not just the company and what it's saying it's doing, but all the back of the cereal packet certifications, innovations. Yeah. We give them a free page as well, because they need help, especially the good ones, getting the message out about what they do. B Corp is a classic one.
Yeah, for sure.
You know how hard it is for, I'm sure a lot of your folks have gone through B Corp. So, but you've got to educate both sides of the market there. I mean, they've sold the benefits to the business, but the business is not going to get the benefit unless the consumers actually go to an easy place to understand what B Corp's all about, and what B Corp can tell the world that they're all about, and then match that process. So, we can do that. You can see B Corp on our profiles, and you can look at all the companies that have got B Corp cert. Yeah. So you can almost build yourself a kind of sustainable shopping list based on B Corp certification or Blue Sign or whatever it is. And that's the idea. So that's the challenge that we solve for consumers. And the benefit for businesses is that increasingly they're going to want to chat. So the example I was going to give you is Kathmandu. Actually done a lot of really cool things, but they produced this, and this is the classic thing about context, they produced this biodegradable jacket. Yeah. Familiar? Then just think about that in the context of being a non-considerate consumer as well as being a sustainable, because the ads were on bus shelters, and there's a wonderful lady, Ethically Kate, she's just written a book. She's sustainability influencer, and she's very balanced but very aggressive around her views, and she was just like, am I allowed to swear on this?
Yes.
What the fuck? And and it's this beautiful jacket. Kathmandu makes good stuff, but it's sitting on a landfill at the top of a clothing pile, implying that it's like this Nirvana product. And then I'm sitting there going, I get that because I'm in that, but I'm also sitting there going, I just bought this to go up, Nepal, and I put it away, and I go there a couple of times, and I go back 5 years later, and it just decides to biodegrade on that trip. I'm like, how do I? When does it go? When does it biodegrade? It's like, is
so many questions.
Is that actually a product benefit or not? When's it going to biodegradate?
Tell me, how long do I have?
How does it know it's been thrown in the rubbish versus I'm in a Wellington 90-knot southerly trying to get home?
What did they actually look like? Did arms did it just start disintegrating?
I don't even know. But the problem is an epic fail. We were very well intentioned and I'm sure very expensive piece of research to get a product out that responded to how do we get more sustainable, and it was just, and so what we're going to provide to brands, on a software as a service basis subscription, is the ability to dig straight into that community live, there's 400 people just downloaded that whole thing and go in as a identified conversationalist for a subscription and say, hey folks, sorry, epic fail here, Kathmandu here, give us the first we're sorry, and then give us that classic sort of PR stuff.
And what do we learn?
Do we condemn them for trying, or do we hats off for trying?
So this is the whole problem with sustainability, and Patagonia is a classic example. They're held up, but you talk to anybody there and you read the books and stuff, and they will never get to full sustainability. No one ever will. I had a boss once at HP, Carly Fiorina. She was the first female CEO, first non HP kind of person to get the right. A lot of things. And she really tried to drive trades, but she always used to say, it's a journey, not a destination. Yeah. And so that's the thing.
And again, I think one of the words, the intent was right.
Intent was right.
Doesn't always mean you're going to get it right.
Yeah, and so that's why we didn't want to become a sort of a rate and grade site, because there's lots of those. We have them on the site. There's one in Australia called Good On You. It's fantastic. They've got a format and they show you, but they're not going to be able to scale. Yeah. And their revenue model is taking transaction clip from people who buy through the person. So we just want to stay away from that a million miles. We're sort of like Trivago when it comes to that, and that's what people need to get the journey, and that's what brands need if they're genuine to get the feedback. And that's what we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's worth noting that it is a beautiful platform.
Thank you.
It's actually awesome to be on. And that's actually not that common in this space. Yeah. I've seen a lot of these platforms, ones that you can purchase if you because they're obviously saying this is a good brand, so then you go purchase, use a discount code, and that's how obviously their business model works. But they're a bit clunky or they don't look nice. This one looks nice. It's worth checking out. It's a great experience.
So I had absolutely nothing to do with that.
But it kind of makes sense given who, the people that are coming to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to Becca O'Shea, who's our designer. She's got her own business, Becca O'Shea Design. I don't know what your website is on Becca. Becca is awesome. I mean, she's really an art director level type influence. She's done work with Garage Project for more appropriate cans and some real diversity thoughts around design as well. And then Andrea's got a great eye for design. So just left them to that.
Awesome.
All things considered is a female focused venture. So my mission in that one is to get out of it as fast as possible, because I really want to make sure this gets taken as our approach to diversity, our being the business world, is appalling in my opinion, and way too slow.
Yeah.
And it's not even because of the gender equity side for me. It's just because of the just do smart shit. Yeah. 70 to 80% of every consumer decision in the world is ultimately decided by a female. And so why is it that we have all of these loaded exec board kind of staff that just do not, and that you just prompted me on the way that site looks.
Exactly.
And so this is a real problem, and it's going too slow. So I think to correct an unconscious bias, you have to have an active conscious bias. And so what we're doing with All Things is I've building a killer advisory board.
Awesome.
Of people, so I can say to somebody when we get down to that short, because I've always had this diverse approach of the active conscious bias to say, look, when we get down to the 3 or 4, because I don't want to put somebody from a gender diversity point of view into a role where they're going to fail.
Absolutely.
So, and this is a problem because it's a conundrum, because how do you get the skills and experience to, if you're actually being basically prevented from getting those skills and you can't turn up on the shortlist? So, I've always had the view that, you get to shortlist, we look at the shortlist, we look at gender, and then we make an active choice towards gender, assuming that all the shortlists have the ability there. Now I'm going another step further, and I'm saying I want to be able to go below that line, and the way I can do it is I can offer people with the right passion. And sort of fashion is a great one to start, because people are passionate about fashion. They want to be in the space, they want to understand it. It's just that they haven't quite worked out what skill set they'll bring to the business. And the advisory board is there to do three things. One, we use their credibility to help us build the brand. Two, they're expected really only just to spend time with our team, and not just in the skill set side. So we're building it as a skill and just a kick-ass leaders diversity. So that they basically just share their tips. So they're mostly female. So Mike Carden's the sort of nominal chair. So he's my co-founder and Sona 6 years ago. Shelley Ruha, who used to run most of the Bank of New Zealand, and Shelley, she will tell you how to progress in a world which has a lot of walls that shouldn't be there. Raylene Castle, who's the CEO of Sport New Zealand, so Raylene was the first female CEO of a NRL rugby league team, and then of course Australian Rugby she's now back here with Sport New Zealand. Lady Nikki Trott, who a phenomenal leader in the fashion industry in the UK. Natalie Ferguson, who's the co-founder of Hatch, and a passionate driver with her team and people now around financial literacy, mainly for females and being that up. So that's the whole kind of. So this is a purpose and profit business for me for the first time, designed literally from the first drawings.
Yeah. Can I take a few steps back? You mentioned that they're being prevented to progress. How do you see that they're being prevented? They, as in.
Look, that's a long conversation. I've had perspectives of it, which are all fascinating and frightening. I've had perspectives where, and this is in the military as well, where female leaders, my belief was always there was some sort of, community, some sort of sisterhood around driving this goal, and that's been, I got curious about that, and I found some flaws in that. There are a number of people I've talked to, and sizable numbers that say that their view of their experience would be that the ladder gets pulled up. In some cases, when leaders, get to a position and feel, I guess, that they've done all that work and they're not actually, and that's the feeling. So I don't know whether it's the case. So those are sort of walls that I wouldn't have expected, other than just the pure. And the thing that triggers me about that, and I won't get too close to it because it was handled well, but I was asked to speak at something. Sean called me out and said, you are one of 18 speakers, and there is one woman speaking twice. And I said, no, I didn't even know. She was slapping me around, and she always did, which was fantastic. So I just got on something, LinkedIn or whatever, and just said, I'm out. Now, the ironic thing is the leader running this event and this trust and everything else was female. And so every step of the process, and full credit to them, they owned it. They said, oh my fucking God, I did not know, I didn't even, and like now, and these are the reflections that we all just need to be. So it's not just the, it's...
Definitely not.
100%.
It's really interesting.
And I guess that's a kind of nice segue into kind of the question of what does a seat at the table mean to you? How does it affect how you lead in terms of businesses or the advisory boards,
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the sort of, what do you do in your day? I mean, Airways New Zealand runs 34 million square kilometres of the world's airspace. So it's quite a big chunk from Antarctica to the USA. So, we're the people that basically make sure that A doesn't crash into B. And we do a phenomenal job of that.
Yeah, an important job.
But very little to do with me, if anything, other than your question, which is when you are at the top of the table. I'm the chair of the People and Culture Committee. I'm a member of the safety committee, so basically if one of these incidents happens, obviously it's a huge disaster that we, every minute of the day, but I also go to jail, from a health and safety accountability point of view. So if there's, a significant flaw found in the way that we've treated our responsibilities at that table. So that weighs on the mind reasonably significantly, and I think that's the thing about these roles, is too many people are seeking them without fully understanding, and startups particularly, it seems like a cool thing to be a director of a startup company. I've been in corporate all my life, and that'd be quite cool, and I'll put 20k in or whatever, and it's just not that anymore. And I think that's the problem when people go, I want to see the seat at the table. It's like, what are you going to do with it? And also, can you handle, the responsibility and accountability of and that's what we talk about with All Things Considered, is this, our platform is where responsibility meets accountability, because the responsibility actually sits, if you think about it, if you do the law of volume, it sits with the consumers more than it does with the brands, to kind of make sure they're consistently and make sure they don't take a second, that they just become considerate. I need to preface that, but to your question, that's what a seat at the table means to me. It's like, it's a lot of responsibility. I don't think you can have a lot of those seats at the table for terribly long, because what enhances the organisation is certainly consistency of strategy, and one of the problems we have with CEOs, I think particularly, is that they're just not in the roles long enough, and yet I don't think the solution is necessarily having them in the role for too much longer, because it's hard, but there's something there between seat at the table or the leadership team or the executive that we could just be smarter about in terms of getting that horizon stuff much longer than 3 to 5 years.
Can you unpack that considerate for us?
Oh, good. Yes, glad you asked me that.
Yeah.
So I think most of it, so my continuum of where we're at as consumers is you start unconscious. We won't spend too much time on that, it's pretty obvious. And then you get sort of subconscious. And this is where I think my generation, I'm a mid-century human, so you can figure out how old that is, but I've decided to stay 49 for
nice.
So nearly a mid-century human, and the problem with my generation is we've been subconscious up until only recently. I think you kind of heard about carbon emissions, and we know the planet, the weather's a bit annoying in Fiji when we go there, and the snow's not as good in Tahoe or whatever. I've never been to either of those places, but that's the kind of vibe, and I should be doing something about. There's a bucket for a cause, because it's social and environmental. I need to keep emphasising that. I think a lot of our consumers are actually more concerned about the social aspects of the companies they buy from than the environmental. And they're actually quite anxious about the fact they shouldn't think the other way around. It's like, you think what you think. So the subconscious is like, there's something there I need to change. I'm not quite sure what it is. I don't understand. I see it on the news every day, and it's not really helping anybody. They'll probably just continue their behaviour. Then you get conscious, and it's like, and this is the cool thing that we're finding with All Things is, our target demographic, because we think they're the real potential for the real flywheel of change, are 20 to 30-year-old females. And part of the reason for that, they're mostly female, and part of the reason for that also is that I call it the sandwich generation effect. So they're actually probably some of the most effective people ever so far in terms of this, mid-century type generation having an impact on their parents and grandparents, actual impact on behaviours, rather than just them sitting there and going, yes. And so this is really exciting, because this is where you can get potentially the flywheel on both, where you come from, subconscious to conscious, which is still not where we want to be. You can guess where we're going now, because there's only one left. But, conscious is good, but you can still consciously buy shit.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. You're like, I know I'm buying like 2 t-shirts, but they're like $3 each. So it's like,
Yes.
And so what we need to be is considerate. And consider it as actually, a directional decision you've made to think about the things that you think about, and then that's another problem itself. It's like, which things do I think about? Because corporates have just sat there and got comfortable, and I've been in meetings around this, where it's like, we're on track for sustainability, we've taken all the rubbish bins out and reduced our waste by X, and we're going to electric vehicles in a fleet by 2030. It's like, job done, tick box. and that's the problem.
Yeah, and I think the generation you're talking about can see through it though.
100%.
Yeah.
But aren't they part of the generation? I remember early in my days in New Zealand when we'd try and conserve water, I think, and it was my girls coming home from primary school who had been messages being delivered to them there, and they're coming home and telling us as parents, you know, that we can't do that, or you know,
have shorter showers.
You talk about anxiety is another big thing.
My girls are now 30, late 20s.
Yeah.
So
but it's not like we were just watching TV last night, and all the water and how and stuff. Last night on the TV program, make sure you don't get sued. They're like, and we've just found that you need to run your water taps every morning for 30 seconds to get rid of the lead in them, so you don't.
I did not hear that.
Yeah, it's like what?
It's just like, hey, you guys. And they had the master plumber dude on, and he's like, yeah, that's a good idea, because it's like, so they reinforce this thing, and like people sitting there, like obviously going, hold on.
So conflicted.
I just thought I was having, and now I got to run my taps for 30 minutes to make sure I, don't get lead poisoning.
And getting X amount of lead every day.
Wow. But that's the anxiety thing you just said before. There is definitely anxiety, I think, in businesses of doing it wrong or not doing enough. But then also in consumers of what do I think now? Like I'm getting messages from everywhere. What do I actually think? When you become like a conscious consumer or considerate consumer, you've got to think to yourself though, okay, well, what is my actual belief in buying this t-shirt versus this, or I don't know.
And how does that translate into what I do?
Yes, into what I do.
And that's,
exactly.
And that's the whole thing. That's just like, it's what you actually do.
Yeah.
The thinking's great and everything else, but none of these problems get anywhere close to solving.
Unless we do something.
Yeah.
What do you activate? What do you change?
And this is the thing about the environment. In the speech I gave on Thursday, it's like, if you think about it, we've been locked in. We've been lied to. Either intentionally or unintentionally for the last 3 to 5 years around greenwashing, around our whole, and so we're actually increasingly selfish because when you get put in the context of like, how long am I locked in for? What am I going to do to get I've just lost my job? How's it? And so that anxiety, and that's another topic of mine that's very passionate around mental health. Because the addressable market for that problem is 100%. It just complicates trying to find people centre, and then of course they do something, and then the rug gets pulled out of them because it's revealed that there was no sustainable. And this has been happening for years. I remember a mate did a master's in law thesis on suing McDonald's in Maryvale in Papanui about a long time ago. And because they put a recycle bin in the back, that early. This has been going on for a long time, and they took photographs of them just putting all the stuff unsorted into both. So it's just like...
So interesting. Oh, I feel like there's a million things that we could take that conversation. But thanks for properly unpacking all things considered, and I'll put the information in the copy.
Thank you.
Really suggest people check it out for sure. But would love to actually dive into Kiwi Landing Pad, which is now Territory 3, and that whole part of your life and the community that you built and still building in that space. What was your biggest learning from that community?
Well, it's not finished yet.
Well, yeah. What's the biggest learning from what you've done in the community?
So I set that up with a personal goal of running it for 20 years.
Wow.
And it was only after 20 years that I thought I could actually work out whether I got what I wanted to get out of it. And some very purposeful people came with me, to Sam Morgan, to Stephen Tyndall, the Holtsworth family, Phil McCaw, Peter Thiel actually was one of the foundation members as well. And the whole idea was like we definitely see something, and I'd just been through this experience myself with Sonar 6. So we started with nothing, sold the business to a publicly listed US company. It's kind of cool, but very lonely and very hard. And so we wanted to make it easier for people to follow that. We were SaaS before we even knew what SaaS was. I remember finding out we were SaaS.
And you're like,
that's what we can call ourselves that. We were multi-tenanted software before that. It doesn't roll off the tongue. So really, that was about just giving back. And we talked to a bunch of people about it. Xero was our first signed up tenant because they were entering the US, and they really highlighted the challenges and the benefits of building a community around something like Territory 3, initially in the US, but it's way bigger than that now. It's about 4,000 or 5,000 members across New Zealand, Australia, US, and so Xero had two things that I'll share at a top level, which I think would be public controversy. They're old enough not to worry. I'm not a Xero shareholder, but the first was that they found it really hard to get out of our temporary kind of workspace, and that raised, remember, $15 million, pre-product pretty much, certainly pre-revenue. But what they found in the context is that no one knew who the NZX was. And so in the San Francisco Bay Area, they wanted to be in central San Francisco. What happens is it's so competitive because all these companies get gassed up with venture capital and they go and find space. The lease agents end up doing a due diligence on the final two people who want to take the space.
Oh, wow.
And they kept missing out because they didn't know who Xero was, they didn't know who their backers were. They're like, they're sort of doing this evaluation. Like usually in a lease, you go, I got the money, you want the lease, we agree the rent, I get to move in. And I'm like, but I've had a look, I don't know your VC. So that was an interesting challenge. And then the second one, which I think was more a product one, which Phil Feelinger had talked about quite a bit with us when he was a speaker, and that's part of what Territory 3 Landing Pad does. It just brings knowledge. We're a curator, basically. We don't really do anything, have a position on it, we just curate people together.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that they underestimated, I think, most of them would say, the prevalence of cheque printing in the US. They still print cheques to this day. Like, cheques are a big deal, right?
I thought you were talking about something else. I just didn't understand.
They actually use
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why we set that up, and the reason I think you had it in the questions, I'll jump to that, around why we changed the name is because of what I was talking about before. So much had changed. We got locked in. We had counselling sessions basically en masse for the first few weeks, and then a lot of organisations started to sort of do them with people who just had no clue what they were going to do as founders.
When COVID came along?
They're locked in. We started these Zoom sessions. I think we had 140 people to the first one.
Wow.
Just looking, it was tears. It was fucking horrible.
Yeah.
Because this wasn't in the playbook. And I mean, and then I had Airways, we lost 95% of our revenue in 4 days.
Yeah.
The world just like...
That's it. And there was the business playbook, and then there's the personal playbook.
Yeah.
And they all
So I was really pleased to see, for all the wrong reasons, the community stand up to playing a good role in there, and we divided. I wrote some pieces, and we tried to help people start thinking about it, because sometimes the reality was actually they just didn't need to shut down. It's kind of working out what mode you're actually in as you went into this crisis. Were you in startup mode, which meant you kind of got really limited resources for quite a short period of time? Were you in sustainable mode where you could just kind of peel things back, or were you in scalable mode where things were probably going to be okay? And I was just finding even directors were just flummoxed because they'd never had a playbook for that sort of severity of change. There is no contingency spreadsheet number that you do 35% off plan, but you do not do like 90% off plan.
Yeah,
exactly.
So no one knows what to do. The only company that I found that actually had a nuts for winter strategy, I think they called it somewhere else, but that's pretty much what it was a real estate agency. And they'd said, he said to me, we just sat as partners and said, there'll be something come along, as we start this business and this journey. So let's just, I think it was like, they said, let's just make sure as we're growing, we throw this into this fund, which would support us with kind of, I think, 20% revenue for at least 10 months.
How long did they do that for?
Since the beginning of the company.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Smart.
And this is the problem we have now, about consumerism or anything else. How many people have a nuts for winter fund? That they started out of COVID. I bet you, like, not nearly as many as you'd think from the learnings that we get.
I think you will see more who now know that you have to kind of do your worst case scenarios.
Yeah, because they've been to the small business owner program, and like they've had it drilled into them, and they've sought knowledge.
At the same time, you want to continue to be cautiously optimistic, like so many of our customers are, but be aware of what it could look like if it got as bad as it could get, and what does that mean for the business.
Well, optimism is a hell of a thing, isn't it? Because you have to have it, and if you have too much of it, you can end up in a bad place.
Cautious optimism more, because it balances it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So what does the future look like for Territory 3?
Shit, I don't know.
Nice.
You mean for Territory 3?
For Territory 3.
I thought you said just generally.
For you, John, tell us.
I think they'll have another Prime Minister by then. It's just standard stuff. So look, Territory 3 is we kind of got a top and bottom strategy. So we enjoy and think the best benefit is working with quite a small number of founders who have proven over because of course the beauty of running it for 11 years, 11 years.
Wow, congrats.
Is that you can actually see, and that's why I love doing our webinars because I can actually talk to the people, remembering them when they just decided to leave Deloitte or something like that, and I think it makes them more comfortable about telling the story probably because they know I know the story pretty well. So I think we just want to continue building that, and then informing what we give to it, because it's a non-profit. It's sponsored by New Zealand Training Enterprise, New Zealand Training Enterprise,
awesome.
Amazon Web Services, and the people I mentioned before. And we wanted to embrace impact, because impact, like building impact around anything, is actually using the same tools that people build community around.
Absolutely.
And just scale that and make sure that we constantly ask the question: is it adding the value being benefit minus the cost of it, and the cost is time and money, to the right people who are then going on and showing. So 20 years time, I wanted to say that. It had made a meaningful impact on the economic creation of growth for New Zealand offshore.
Yeah.
And there will be no metric there. I'll just sit there over a beer and go, don't know.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. Wow, that's so cool.
I'm going to back up towards the top of the list, because I'm interested in what you think people misunderstand about you the most.
Oh, that's a long one. I've been married twice.
That's a big question.
Raised 5 kids. What they understand, I'm actually really happy to go and just chill with no one around me. That's probably one of my happier places. Like one of my I love people, but and I know a lot of people, and I think that's people remind me of that a lot, and I'm privileged that I've been able to sort of achieve that. But I think people are probably always surprised at just how if I'm in my happy place, I'm actually just not going to say much.
It's interesting, because I think that's a misunderstanding, see that where people who are so social, so engaged in community activity, so networked, it doesn't mean that's where they get their energy from. When they need to recharge, they need to kind of take themselves away and just be with themselves. But it also is completely aligned, John, with your purpose.
Yeah.
And that need to kind of have another mirror conversation every once in a while.
Yeah, and I think it's always more about listening than it is about talking. And the reason I talk is because I have listened, and I'm trying to build something. Because I think, and I will talk. You will get, you will get from me what I want you to hear. Whether you understand or take it somewhere is entirely up to you. But so that's kind of part of the, part of the hustle, rather than being part of my sort of natural state.
So interesting.
Brilliant.
Doing a little quick deep dive into community for business owners and that sort of thing. What elements, from your perspective, make up a thriving community right now, post-COVID world?
Look, I think you're looking for quality signs of life in terms of engagement.
Yeah.
Way more these days than volume. So, how do people engage with each other? So a thriving community would be regular engagement, deeply around whatever it was that the community was created around. And then the second piece of that would be people who were ideally, balancing themselves off between those giving into the community versus those having asks to get out of it.
Yeah.
And so those sort of symbiotic sort of elements are there, then I think you've got a thriving community, and they roll off the tongue way more easily than they do in actually being able to build them.
One thing I learned from your webinar with Sian was like a thriving community is when you're helping people help each other. And I thought that was gold, and it's something that I know has helped what we're doing here, is how can we create a space where people feel like they can really easily support each other, you know, not being the middleman, but connecting them together to, like the dinner you said you had in Wellington, you know, was it yesterday the day before? How can we just create a space where they can bounce ideas off each other and learn from each other? I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, hapere is the name, Māori name for a community, and it's just it almost needs not resetting, but you know, it will never get reset. But the reframing of it, because I mean, if you look at the Māori, you know, the principles, we've got so much to learn from that culture about their view of vision, and you know, there is no end vision, and then you're just caretaking it for it's so super cool concept. But around community, I mean, you know, you literally see people very naturally growing up in the custody of various people in their lives, well beyond the sort of European traditional family, and I think that is a great example of what real thriving community means, because there are obligations created over a long period of time based on commitments people, you know, it's ultimately it balances out. Someone has to pay forward sometimes, and then but they know that those facilities are there, and therefore the community stays tight. You know, that's why you have these huge celebrations of life, these tangis and so forth. Everyone comes together because that's all part of the community experience.
Yeah, so much more depth than breadth.
And again, I think so much of it when you look at Te Māori is the time frame that they look at things in, and it's not short.
Yeah, it's curation.
Yeah.
Like, you're just a curator, you've got to do your best, and really you're sort of out there thinking about, you know, your kids.
Yeah. We're trying, you know, to learn from that and figure out how to effectively apply, but it's just a horizon that is so much longer than often we take.
So true. Like, we're used to 5-year plans and things like that, and they're like 5-year plans, you know. We're here for generations, and it's something we could do.
5 years is a really short time when you think about it.
Yeah,
Very short time.
Yeah.
so short.
Just dipping it, toe in the water.
Yeah,
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah, for sure. No, so much to learn. That's cool. What are the benefits of businesses building communities of their own? So obviously, there's benefits for business owners to be in community with others. What are your thoughts on?
Well, this is a great question, and it led me to go to the web for the for the definition of community, and it's like, I think a business is always a community. So all you're doing is actually just spending more time expanding your particular community aspect.
Yeah, and I think it also goes back. I think you've said a few things this morning that are suggestive of the idea that if a business genuinely behaves like a community, it's the balancing off between giving in versus taking out. Whereas I think if you ask certain businesses to kind of think about that, would it be kind of?
I think that's true, and I think it comes down to authenticity. And that's a big problem right now. Is just where do how do you define that? And intention, you said it before, intention as well.
And you have to define it. Nobody's going to prescribe it to you.
No, and it's constantly changing. And this is the thing we want to do with All Things Consider. Is so we're going to have a considerating. It's meant to be super secret, I think, but and so the idea of that, so with homes, we had a homes estimate, which was a whole bunch of logarithms that were taking data in around recent sale prices and economic trends and stuff, and giving homeowners in New Zealand are pretty good. In some cases it was accurate for regions, depending on activity, because that's how the data gets more accurate, of about 5% in terms of what a house would actually sell for. Wow. It was a really cool thing to give to people, way better than a rateable value sort of scenario, which can be like miles off. And councils, when we start talking to them about that, they're like, yeah, fair, cool. We don't build them for accuracy about what your house is really worth. We just need to work out how much to charge you for rates.
Wow.
So, that was a classic example of something used in a way that they never intended it. But I think the considerating reflects that intention. Where does that, so Kathmandu, jacket, boom. So it's not video. I'm moving my hands around. And the arrow goes down, and then they're back on a lot of good things they do, and so the arrow starts to come back up. And so what we want to give people is a trusted platform that shows them, generally speaking, where's that arrow headed. Is it flat? And this is the thing about community, is like everyone can play a role, and one of the things that's really had brands, the question about how fast can a cult or a small brand come through, is that they don't have the resources to have fancy web pages, and they might get a web page built if they've got one at all. Yeah. And so what we've just done with All Things is really exciting, is we've actually just allowed you to upload a PDF document now. So you can just write a letter that says, hey, I make 40 items a year in Parnell and sell them, and we do it out the back here, and it's it's solar powered and whatever you want. So you can be on the same footing for consumers going.
If it comes from here, the heart, and a simple PDF can go so much further than a flashy, $50,000.
Well, that is all our current All Things site is it's just letters. I wrote a letter. I said I'm fucked off because I just learned about
that. Was brilliant. That's brilliant. Everyone needs to read that letter.
Yeah, and it's authentic because they can fuck off. It's just it's ridiculous how we've been, just thinking that we as the consumers will just happily play along to whatever marketing are told to try and tell us is going on.
Absolutely. So true. Love it. We've got 5 more. Well, we don't really. We've got 1 more minute, to be honest.
1 more minute.
So I've got to wrap it up, but I don't want to.
When do I get to ask my questions? Is it?
Oh yeah. Do you have something to hit us with?
Got a whole list here.
Sorry, that's not the way it works.
We've just been talking about the balance and the.
There's no balance.
I just assume.
Don't assume, it makes an ass out of you.
No, thank you, John. It's awesome, and I'm going to finish with one question. I'm deciding what I want it to be. Who's one person you'd like to thank? Someone that's been influential in your journey. It
has to be. I have to break the rules again. It's my mum and dad.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just basically what they instilled in us, and also just that they, if I think about all stages of my life, they just actually wanted, us to be able to do our best.
Yeah.
At considerable sacrifice for themselves.
What did they instill in you?
Just, I think they were very, very balanced people who just, their generation was all about making sure the kids had everything. And I think, all credit to your mum and dad, but I'm a very different parent around that. I mean, I think I'm just a curator of experiences, generally once, and then if there's some take in that. Dad taught me, I was a competitive swimmer for many years, and what that meant, and where I lived in Christchurch was Dad getting up with me at like 4 o'clock in the morning to go swimming 7 times a week, or 8 times a week, 2 times on a Sunday and every day for squad training stuff. So, and I kind of liked it, but and I met a guy actually called Mark Spitz. He came to talk to us one morning, right? And he taught me about the concept of a great speech at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't know, he won lots of gold medals.
Heaps.
And he just talked about this concept of like 105%. It's like you don't need to give 100, you actually need to give 105. And so you just rattle that up. I'd still, that's like. Yeah. So thanks Dad for getting up in the morning. I mean, I didn't get up at the Commonwealth Games or doing anything around that, but that speech, for his commitment for a year or 2 years, I think I did that, was just it's life defining.
That's so cool. What a way to finish. Thanks for sharing your wisdom and inspiring us and the listeners.
Thanks for having me.
Just brilliant.